The Backrooms. You've been here before. Person of interest: Caspian Langellier. Name: Caspian Langellier. Aliases: Backrooms Bard, self-titled on occasion. Casper, informally. Last known location: Level 1. Known affiliations: none. Image caption: a stylized portrait of Caspian, utilized here as he reportedly dislikes having his picture taken. Caspian Langellier, or typically referred to as Caspian or Casper, is an 18-year-old male of Franco-American descent, recognizable by his generally androgynous appearance with a pale complexion, blue eyes, and dark hair. Caspian wears a variety of clothing and carries a blue-colored backpack with him wherever he goes. Much of Caspian's fame outside of Meg expedition teams is owed to his prodigious musical talent, which he often utilizes during so-called concerts. Typically, Caspian will abruptly decide to play a few pieces of music in a central area, usually in what would generally be considered the central area of a settlement, before finding a comfortable position to lean or sit on. After this, he takes his flute out of his backpack along with a portable digital speaker, typically in order to play along to a certain melody. Most frequently, a small crowd will gather to listen to melodies of many different kinds from the front rooms, as well as his own improvised songs. From observation, the general reaction to his music is a feeling of serenity, and Caspian has received high praise for his musical talent from those interviewed for this article. He has been known to have played concerts in many populated areas of the Backrooms, and is reported to have been recently seen making performances in Meg bases several times, primarily the main bases on Level 1, Level 4, and Level 11. There is another more intriguing aspect of Caspian Langelier's musical talent. According to numerous sources, his music has a calming effect on conscious and semi-conscious life forms, especially those with violent or aggressive intentions or instincts. People listening to his performances have also reported feeling intensely negative emotions seemingly disappear in a manner that cannot be simply explained through Caspian's style of play. Image caption: Caspian's flute, a Yama A FL 677. Caspian was first brought to the attention of the Meg when several eyewitnesses reported that while being chased by entities, they caught a glimpse of a brown-haired teenager matching Caspian's appearance playing an instrument nearby. As they came into the audible range of the music, they reported that the entities chasing them appeared to grow sluggish and become relaxed, often stopping in their tracks completely. The eyewitnesses themselves also reported feelings of numbness and relaxation during their ordeals, but all still remained aware enough to continue making their escape. While Caspian's music has been described by numerous sources as intense, enchanting, and simply magical, examinations have shown nothing strange, altered, or otherwise anomalous about the qualities of his flute. Experiments have shown that recordings of Caspian's music fail to produce any kind of particular reaction from entities. Due to this mysterious ability, Caspian, while residing or staying in the main bases of the Meg, has occasionally been asked to participate in expeditions into dangerous levels. He has typically tended to accept these requests under two conditions. 1. Caspian is not officially a member of any kind of Meg organization. He is an independent, unaligned figure doing temporary volunteer work for the Meg and is not beholden to any exclusivity agreement. 2. At minimum, the payment for Caspian's services is a large tin of shortbread, his favorite food. He typically receives additional items. Several would-be entity attacks on scientific expeditions have been prevented as a result of Caspian's presence. Given Caspian's value to both the Meg and Wanderers as a whole, he has been designated a notable figure and his safety has been made a priority of the group. Personality: Caspian, outside of his performances, is often described as quiet, imaginative, and something of a romantic personality in more ways than one. He also typically becomes much more avid and outgoing while discussing something in his direct interest, such as art, especially music. In public or at formal gatherings, he also appears much more polite and charismatic. Within performances, Caspian displays a highly eager, passionate side of himself. Many of his extroverted traits, well hidden in his typical shyness, exploding into life. He also appears to be very comfortable performing in front of a stage. Meg interview with Caspian Langellier, recorded in order to gain extended first-hand information. Show interview. Begin log. Time 1521. Date 04/15/2022. Location Level 1. Interviewer Meg researcher David Clarnett. Interviewee Caspian Langellier. Researcher Clarnett turns on the camera. Immediately, we hear the sound of a flute, seemingly playing some sort of jazz ballad. Analysis later reveals this to be a flautist cover of Ella Fitzgerald's Moonlight Serenade. The camera pans. We see a group of at least 30 or so people visible in the background, surrounding a chair. On the chair stands a short, brown-haired boy in his late teenage years, wearing a beige shirt and dark pants, moving his fingers and blowing into a metal flute. For about a minute, the camera simply focuses on the boy, so deeply immersed in his music that he does not even open his eyes. The audience simply watches, many of them appearing awestruck. After approximately a minute, the boy finishes his song, lowers his flute, and makes a courteous blow to wild applause. After the applause has died down, he speaks. Caspian Langellier. Thank you everyone for coming to listen to me today. If any of you have some supplies or almond water, that would be greatly appreciated. Just put it in the bucket next to me. Making this music is something of a living for me at this point, you know. No problem if you don't or can't, of course. Several people come forward, each one placing materials ranging from almond water to varying snacks in a small bucket located next to Caspian's chair. He gratefully thanks each of them verbally. All of them appear to receive a high five. Caspian. Again, everyone, thank you so much. If you enjoyed it, do come again. As the crowd disperses, researcher Clarnett approaches Caspian, who is packing the received supplies along with his flute into his backpack while humming a tune. David Clarnett. Caspian Langellier, I presume. Caspian Langellier looks up for a moment and proceeds to look around Clarnett before looking at him with a slight nervous smile. Yep, that's me. David Clarnett. Ah, hello, I'm David Clarnett, a researcher for the Meg, and I just want to interview you to learn a little more about you and your, let's say, talents. Caspian Langellier. Oh, you're here for an interview. Neat. I was a bit worried that I was in trouble for something. David Clarnett. Not at all. Caspian Langellier. Alright, so what would you like to ask me about? David Clarnett. Well, a few things, if that would be possible. Caspian Langellier. No problem. I've got a lot of time. Ask away. David Clarnett. Well, we'll start with the easy questions. I think we both know what your name is already, so I'll move on to the other ones. What would you say your age is? Caspian Langellier. 18, as of now. David Clarnett. Alright. You're a musician. What would you say your favorite song is? Caspian Langellier. Easy. Love theme from Cinema Paradiso. David Clarnett. Alright, I'm finished with the simple ones. We'll move on to the more detailed questions, I suppose. First of all, when did you fall into the Backrooms? Caspian Langellier. Oh, not too long ago, I think. Maybe about 2 years ago? I remember it was sometime in May. I remember tripping over the stairs in my apartment, and instead of face planting on the ground, I ended up here. David Clarnett. Huh. Interesting. You've been in the Backrooms for quite a short time compared to some of the other notable people we've documented. Would you say that you've gotten used to it? Caspian Langellier. I suppose so, yeah. My home life was never really great on Earth. In some way, I suppose getting here was a way to start something new. David Clarnett. So would you say that your transition from the front rooms to the back rooms was fairly easy? Caspian Langellier laughs silently. Well, I wouldn't say that. Like everyone else, probably. It was kinda tough to think about the fact that I wouldn't ever get to do, well, a lot of the things I enjoyed. a lot of the things I loved anymore. It's not like this place is any more exciting. It's way less so at times, and pretty much all the exciting levels can kill you. So, at the beginning, all I really had left was the belongings in my bag, which fortunately came with me when I no-clipped. And one of those items was my flute. David Clarnet, did you have a passion for the flute before you no-clipped into the Backrooms? Caspian Langellier, absolutely. Actually, I really enjoyed playing a bunch of instruments, like keyboard, saxophone, and the like, but I always loved the flute the most, and, well, I was really lucky that I had it. Otherwise, I'm not sure what I'd be doing right now. David Clarnet, speaking of which, when did you realize that you had the ability to calm down, well, a lot of stuff with your flute? Caspian Langellier, it was a few days after I'd no-clipped in. It was on this level, actually. I was running out of snacks in my bag, and it felt like I was going in circles. And of course, the occasional entity was always keeping me on my toes. I was so bored that I sat down for a moment in an area that I thought was clear and opened up my flute case. David Clarnet, did you not think that playing music here was a hazardous affair given the hostile entities that appear on this level? Caspian Langellier, not really. I was so tired at that point that I could barely register a conscious thought, and I wanted to keep my spirit a bit up at the very least. So I started playing, and it was barely 30 seconds after I started, slowly pacing around the room I was in, that I saw one of those clump thingies behind a pillar. The thing that saved my life was that, well, I realized it wasn't moving towards me. The other one I'd seen chased after me immediately. I wasn't sure why. Then, as soon as I stopped playing to make a run for it, it began to shake itself off and started moving. I managed to get out of there, and a few hours later, I reached this place, Base Alpha. David Clarnet. So, did you realize then that your music was calming at that point? Caspian Langellier. No, it took me a week or so to realize that. I was pretty tired at the time, after all. I was doing a practice performance, and then, within my line of sight, I saw like 4 or 5 people having an argument. All of a sudden, they just stopped, like all of them just flattered, looked at me, looking like they were wondered what they were mad about. Then, I stopped for a moment to change my music, and they were all at each other's throats again. And then when I started playing a different song, they had all relaxed again. And a few minutes later, when I stopped playing that song, they had all forgiven each other. And then later, while I was thinking about it, I made the connection to the clump I'd seen, and yeah, that was when I first had an inkling. I tried it a few more times. Every time I played, people or entities seemed to mellow out. Then you guys found out about it, and yeah. David Clarinet. Yeah, indeed. So, would you say that you find reducing these kind of hostilities, keeping people safe in general, with your music is something that you take contentment in? Caspian Langellier. Well, of course. It's sometimes a bit tedious, though, to be honest. I prefer playing music in front of audiences like the one you just saw, you know? David Clarnet. Fair enough. Additional information. Outside of accompanying expeditions, Caspian is, as aforementioned, typically either found on safer levels that have a permanent population, or otherwise occasionally found on semi-dangerous levels, reportedly to quote-unquote find inspiration. Caspian's singing voice, while not as effective as his usage of a flute, also seems to have a calming, relaxing effect on life forms, suggesting that the calming effect of his music comes from his person rather than his instrument. Along with his musical talent, Caspian claims to have been a practitioner of fencing before he entered the Backrooms. While this obviously cannot be confirmed, he does appear to be highly dexterous and agile. Caspian speaks both fluent English and French, and while his word choice and slang is consistent with American English, he appears to speak with a slight French accent. Whether this is natural or purposeful is unknown. Addendum. Hey everyone, it's your Backrooms Bard here, Caspian. The Meg invited me to write this addendum, a message to any aspiring music artists. Whether you may be within or without the Backrooms, I wanted to rewrite the whole article, way too much seriousness up there, but they wouldn't let me, unfortunately. Firstly, they chose an instrument that really tickles your fancy. Do some research before you choose, preferably. There's nothing worse than getting in an instrument only to realize it doesn't pique your interest, and that you'd rather have a different one. Secondly, practice, of course, but don't practice too much. From personal experience, practicing hours at a time over a few days quickly gets you burnt out. Just play consistently for 20 to 30 minutes a day or so. Quality over quantity is always best while practicing. Thirdly, when you practice, sometimes it's cool to try and imagine one of the musical giants is watching you play, maybe for some sort of audition. I sometimes imagine that Louis Armstrong or Frank Sinatra is watching me play one of their songs. It makes it more exciting. Finally, and most importantly, never lose hope. Even if you feel you're not good or not improving, for as long as you can, keep going. And if you hold it in your heart, always, you'll realize that you're better than you know. Unless you truly know in your heart that it no longer brings you joy, don't give up on your instrument of choice. Well, that is all I have to say. Chase your dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem, unless they cause serious danger to yourself. Maybe one day we'll have a full orchestra of musicians in the Backrooms. How crazy would that be? Caspian, a musician's passion is a wanderer's salvation.